Welcome. I'm John Townsend. Welcome to Dr. Townsend Live. And for the next hour, we're going to be answering your questions about, who knows, relationships and family and marriage and dating and work and career and leadership and emotions and spiritual values and all that stuff that they used to call the soft science, which it's really nice that now that neuroscience came out and proved that all that stuff is really hard science, that there's reasons for all this. And we give you some solutions and answers. And we have a great community here of people that are supportive and want to open up about something. And so we're looking forward to that. We're here every Wednesday from 2 to 3 Pacific time. And we try to make it something that even if your question didn't get answered, you heard stuff that you can go, well, there's a little nugget that I can use in my daily life. We want to make it so it's worth your time because everybody's busy, but you also want to get problems solved. And that's kind of what we're about. And our great producer who solves a lot of tech problems is Stacy. Come here to say hi to these nice people, Stacy.
Hello, everyone. Hey there, John. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're so glad that you're here today with us. And keep in mind, we have 1 hour, so we're with you for the next hour. If you've already seen the media postings for the number, then you've got the number to call in, and it looks like some callers are already starting. But if you do not have the number, go ahead and grab a pen and paper, and I'll give that to you. It is 1-877-853-5257. Again, 877-853-5257. And when you dial that number, you're going to enter a meeting ID code to enter the waiting room until your call is selected. The meeting ID code is 876-5437-2012. Again, 876-5437-2012. And one thing we want to remind you of is that this is a call-in show. While if you're watching this show on one of John's media platforms, you can see him, but for privacy purposes, go ahead and turn your camera off if you plan on calling into the show so we can hear your audio only. And without further ado, we'll get started.
Thanks, Stacy. So Stacy's going to be whatever she does. I was going to say she lurks around, but how negative is lurk? She doesn't lurk. She scans. She scans who wants to talk about what and everything, and she handles those things. She'll have something for us. But while she's doing that and picking the very best call or question we've got, you might have gotten the email blurb that I sent out earlier today that had to do with leadership, because we work a lot with leadership. And what it was called, if you're a leader, you need a life team. Now, a lot of people say, I got a team. Yeah, blow it off. I know what you mean. But let me explain what that means. There are two kinds of teams we need to succeed, especially in leadership. And one is what you would call a task team, T-A-S-K, task team. And that's the executive team. That's the board. That's the marketing meeting. That's the sales meeting. That's whatever, a financial meeting. And those have to do with certain tasks that are necessary for leaders to run their organization well, whether it's a for-profit, corporate, family business, entrepreneurial gig, church ministry. But then there's the life team. And life team has to do with people that may not know everything about how you structure your business, but they know you. And they don't have to be in one group. Sometimes, people will say, well, I've got a group. And I get it. I mean, groups great. I've been in tons of groups. I love groups. But sometimes a life team is one that's where you sort of curate the people that are best fit for your personal growth on a values level, chemistry level. Can they be vulnerable level? Can they give you grace as well as truth? And leaders, you desperately need a life team. Besides having God on your side and your spouse on your side and your Labrador Retriever Max on your side, that's not a life team. That's good, but you need more than that. You need some people who are your mutuals, your equals, and are willing to go deep and get vulnerable with you about their growth and your growth. So it's not a bunch of people where you're always in the spotlight and you're the one with the problems. That's coaching or counseling or whatever. It's the people who want to grow with you. That's the life team. And you need one. And what we found out is that leaders can have great task teams and great vision and all that. And God, great spouse, great dog, and it's not enough. So start to think about it. If you're intrigued by the idea of actually some people on your team, get my book, People Fuel. There's a whole list of the 7 characteristics of those people. It tells you how to go through it. All right. So anyway,
All right,
say something
wonderful.
like we got somebody who's got a question, and let's do
That's
it.
right. Caller, you are live on the Dr. Townsend live show. Go ahead and tell us your first name and where you're calling us from today.
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
I hear you fine.
Okay, all right. Hi, Dr. Townsend. My name is Wei Jin. I'm calling
How do
here
you,
from
how do you spell that?
Weijin.
Weijin? Weijin.
Yes.
Am I saying that
Yes,
right?
Weijin.
Weijin?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay, welcome. And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Atlanta.
Well, welcome, Weijin. And what's your question for us today?
I just have a quick question. I wanted to ask, because I've read the Boundaries book, right? I was wondering if there's sort of like an emotional development roadmap, like an emotional maturity roadmap. Like for example, at this age, you're supposed to be, able to handle your anger or manage your time well and so on. So I was wondering if there's any kind of resources that you would point me to.
There are several developmental maps like that. And I'll just tell you kind of where to go for them. The fundamental one, the one that started all, was by a psychoanalyst named Erik Erikson, Erikson. And he divided life into about 7 stages, from childhood all the way till old age. And he talks about the different tasks involved. Now, since he did that, others have come out. But what would be good for you to do, if you're interested in this, is start with Erikson, because any website will say, and here's what, because he did that maybe, I don't know, 70 years ago. So there's been a lot of research since then. And it'll say, now here are the updated ones. But these are fairly common assessments that you can get hold of. I can't think of one right now. I'll think about it probably after the show. But start with Erikson. The second thing is, I have an assessment called Townsend Personal Relational Assessment Tool, TPRAT, and you can get that on my website. Now that is not age related. Like by the time I'm 40, I need to be X, Y, Z. That would be more the developmental Ericksonian thing. But mine has to do with, you said how emotional maturity. Mine has a lot to do with emotional and relational maturity of where an adult needs to be, and how do you know what mature is? And it goes through 4 stages. It takes you, 10 minutes to do. So those are 2 sources for you. And I hope that helps.
Okay, all right. I think that should be all. Thank you so much.
All right, sir. Good luck. Bye-bye. I think it's really important. I like that he did that, that Weijin did that, because some of us who want to grow and change, we're kind of like, well, how do I know if I'm better? I mean, am I behind schedule? Am I ahead of schedule? I mean, am I getting an A or am I getting a D minus? And growth really isn't all that metric, but there are metrics, because assessment tools are very good these days. And so avail yourself of them. It's good to know where you are, and especially where the challenge areas are. Like in the TPRAT, you might go, well, I'm pretty good with, it has to do with what we call Asia, like the Asia, the continent, attachment, separation, integration, and adulthood. You might go, I'm really good at attachment. My separation, my boundaries, me speaking up, not so good on those. And so you know what to work on. The challenge areas are where the real growth is. So hope that helps. So we got somebody else, right, Stacey?
Okay, that's right. Caller, you are live on the Dr. Townsend live show. Go ahead and tell us your first name and where you're calling us from.
Hi, my name is Joshua. I'm calling from Rockwall, Texas, though I'm not a Texan.
So you are an import from somewhere else besides Texas. Where did you import from, Joshua?
I've imported from a few different places. I am a Canadian, but I am a missionary working and living in Nigeria, and I'm currently here on my network speaking tour at the moment.
Well, I hope that bears good fruit, and thanks for calling. What's your question for us?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was just, I was wondering, so I have a mission organization that I've been building in Nigeria. I've been doing it for a number of years over there, and by the grace of God, that has borne a lot of fruit. And as it grows, naturally, it demands more and more of me. And naturally, that means I need to have people underneath me to take care of and help things as well. So as I do that, I also have to come over to the state side and raise support. It's that kind of work where fundraising is a huge part of that, developing a team, developing a network around you. And as I've been doing this over the past number of years, I'm still fairly young, but already it's been 6 years doing this. I find that as I continue to grow and grow and grow, and as the team grows, for instance, over here, that demands a lot more of me as well. And to really nourish the team, to have a team that is involved, that is a real partner in the work, not just supporters and such. And I find myself more and more stretched. And I was wondering, Doctor, if you could just help me. How do you maintain that balance? But also, how do you continue to nourish and build a real team around you that supports you while you're overseas and you're moving even from country to country, and then you have to invest in a lot of your energy and your time there, and then perhaps the network suffers. How do you continue to grow that and nourish it while you find yourself growing and being more and more stretched?
You need a board.
Outside of that,
Well, let's slow down. Well, let's don't go outside of that. Do you have a board?
I have a board in the sending agency that I'm a part of, but now I've grown to the point where perhaps taking on a board would make some sense.
Yeah, that's what that was my first thought, Joshua, is you're at that kind of inflection point organizationally where clearly, before that, you were enough to train others, grow others, disciple others, do the networking, raise funds, and you're not. And it's kind of the double-edged sword of having good fruit. And so you're at that now. And what most people do who are at that point is that they recruit a board. And let me just talk about the functions and aspects of board. It would not be a board of directors because you're a 501c3, a nonprofit. You would be a board of advisors. But it's kind of the difference between growth and not growth. It's that important, Joshua, because you want to get people around you. When I started the program today, I was talking about teams, and I talked about there are task teams and there are personal teams, and you need a bunch of people around you, not many, 3, 4, 5, 7, and they need to help oversee you as you oversee your ministry. And what they do is they help you with the resourcing of the things that you either cannot do because you're not good at them, or the things that you're good at, but there's not enough of Joshua to go around. So people that, a banker, somebody who's good with finances, somebody who's good with marketing, somebody who's good with sales, somebody who's good with fundraising. Sometimes they talk about how boards are like, I've been on boards all my career. And one of the statements they use is that if you're going to be on a board, especially of a nonprofit, then it's get or give. Have you ever heard that phrase, get or give?
Yes, I have.
What does it mean to you?
That's a good question. It means my priority should always be, what can I offer other people first? What can I initiate? What can I give them before I get anything, and let the Lord decide what they want to give?
That's kind of one, but I'm going a different direction. I'm a little more prosaic than on this one, Joshua. It means either get the money or give the money. I'm being very practical here. So board members have got to be willing to either talk to their friends and say, hey, Josh has got a great ministry. Can you start giving to us? Or can we have a development dinner? Or can we have a fundraising dinner? Or I can't get anybody, so I've got to write a check myself. You need people like that, as well as people who are good at organizational matters. And if you it sounds like, since it's doing well, you can go to some people and ask people who could be on a board. And, a lot of times, especially Christian business women and businessmen will go, I'm at a place in my career where I've got more time. I want to give back, or I'm retired or whatever. And they love to be on boards because they feel like they're part of something that's doing good and bringing spiritual value to the world. And they say, I'll show up on board. And then they become your allies, your confidants, your advisors. So you don't have to make all this stuff up.
Absolutely. No, that's very helpful. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
Actually, you got to make it really quick because we kind of don't allow them, but ask it fast.
Sorry. What if when you find yourself, you're in a position where you're already part of a 501c3, you're part of, that's your sending agency. Are you ultimately advising in that capacity? Does one need to break forward and establish himself independently, or you do it within that already existing 501c3 case structure?
Do you like them? Do you have similar values in chemistry? Do you like their culture? Do you like where they're going?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then I would go to them and I would say, I need help.
Right.
Because we're growing so fast. And either they'll say, okay, we'll provide you the help, or we're tied up, we don't have any resources, and we don't have any money or anything, and we're just running by a shoestring. Then you might have to pray about, okay, maybe I need to go on my own. People do that all the time. And it's no harm, no foul. It's like, here's
Right.
the fruit.
No, it isn't.
And I want to be a
Very
good
often.
steward. And so there's no bad guys here. You just kind of go, if y'all can't give me what I need to help this thing grow the way I see it growing, maybe we just need to be friends and separate.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you very much, Doctor. I appreciate the time
All right,
and the
man.
advice.
Okay, thanks,
Take
Josh.
care now.
It, like I said, it's the double-edged sword. Sometimes people try to keep doing it themselves, and it just doesn't work. That inflection point is just a reality. There's a really good book called E-Myth, E-MYTH. If you've ever been in business, you've read the book. And it's just a classic because it talks about how there's a difference between working in the business, in the organization, and on the organization. In the organization is very different than on the organization. Joshua is in the organization. He's doing the preaching and the teaching and the discipling and the development and the nurturing and raising the money. But he needs to be having other people move more of the in via the help of his board, so he can be working on the business. That's how things grow past that little, one-stop shopping center inflection point. Anyway, Hi. Who we got you, Stacey?
All right, next up, caller, you are live on the Dr. Townsend Live Show. Go ahead and tell us your first name and where you're calling us from today. Caller, are you with us? Let's see. Caller ending in 867 phone number. Are you online?
I'm sorry.
There you are.
I'm online. I didn't realize you were talking to me.
No, you're fine. Welcome to the Dr. Townsend Live Show. You're live with Dr. Townsend. Go ahead and tell us your first name and where you're calling from.
This is Anita from Houston, Texas.
Hello, Anita from Houston, Texas, number 867. How are you?
I'm fine. So I have a question. I was thinking about what you said about having a life team. And so I actually proceeded to do that, right? I signed up people and I followed your process where I would ask them, I told them what it is I needed from them, and that I needed them to be a safe circle for me and so forth. And so the people who actually agreed to do that, they said they would do it, and they signed up to do it. And what I found was, in the midst of COVID, there were some people who made everything very political. And so when I had to make certain decisions for the organization, it was like they literally cut me off and walked away. I mean, no explanation. They didn't even call. I just got a text message that says, we did not feel led by the Spirit, to be walking with you anymore, and won't return my calls. And it really wounded me. And it made me afraid to actually reach out again. And I found myself kind of going into my own hole and feeling like going into my cave and saying, man, it's not safe out there.
Right.
And I don't want to expose myself and get hurt like that again. And I was just wondering, how do you get past that so that you can open your heart again?
First off, I'm really sorry, because if there's anything that a leader like yourself needs, it's people that would never do that to them. And so the wound is a real. I'm just validating that the wound is a real wound. I'm sorry, Anita.
Okay.
let me get some facts first. How many people did you recruit to your life team, and how many abandoned you and canceled you?
Probably maybe 7, and 2 of them canceled.
And the other 5?
They're fine. They're solid.
Okay. All right. So something in you took those 2 and generalized them not only to the other 5, but to any other potential people. That's what the principle of generalization says is maybe, I mean, 2/3 of the people like you and believe you and are still on your side. 1/3 were jerks. And so your brain went, well, maybe everybody's like that. That's what the principle of generalization says. This small, crazy minority is how everybody's going to be. So don't talk yet about what to do about the new people. Let's talk about what your brain did. Because your brain should have gone, I don't know if you were under stress or if these people had symbolic kind of power over you, or if they reminded you of somebody that controlled you in their past. There's something there, Anita, because what your brain should have done if it was not getting triggered by this was to go, oh, 2/3 get it, and then 1/3 is they kind of nuts. Well, God bless them. I hope they find a good life. Let me find 2 more. That's what your brain should have done had you not gotten triggered. Are you following me?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the question. What is it about those 2 that got your power? Is it their personality or their roles or how they are or the money they have or the status they have? Something about those people made you give them much more power than they deserved.
I think that they came across seeking me out, like they wanted a relationship, and so I think there must be a need in me to want that relationship. So if I'm thinking about my past, I think I grew up where I was very, very close to my mom, and she was like this person that I would go to all the time, and she was in an abusive relationship, and so she ended up killing herself.
I'm so
and
sorry.
I remember though, I would call my dad up and I would say something like, Dad, I'm not doing well. And he would say, oh, okay, bye. And then he would just hang up on me. So I think that maybe the trigger is you've got to be okay, because if you're not okay, then they will be just like your dad. They won't want any part of you. So you always have to be okay. So maybe for this person, when they did that, maybe it opened up that wound with my dad, and it just sent that message to me that says, you see, it happened again. You can't be vulnerable. You can't be not okay, because if you're not okay, people will leave you.
I agree with you very, very, very strongly on this. I think that your viewpoint of that, to lose a mom to suicide, is a very, very deep wound. And that's when your dad should have shown up. Instead of waiting for you to call him and say, I'm not okay, he should have been calling you regularly saying, how's my girl? How you doing? And wanting to draw out the vulnerability, wanting to know more about the pain. Not only was he passive, so you had to reach out to him, but then he shoots you down. So you're right. The message is the vulnerable Anita is going to be left. So I must be the got it to keep it together, strong Anita. And that's the message. Now, let me tell you what to do about that. Have you had conversations with the other 5 on your team about this? That, Susie and Joe left. Let's talk. Have you processed it with your team yet about Susie and Joe bailing on you?
I think that, yes. So when I process it with them, what they'll say to me is, why don't you focus on the ones who stayed?
Okay. I give them about a C+ on that. But here's the A thing. That's not bad, but it's not quite what you need. Is instead, you do need to focus on it. I think you need to go to them individually and say, I'm really shaken up. I have a traumatic background, as you know, and it shook up a real deep vulnerability in me. And regardless of anybody else, I'm talking to you now, Beth. I need to know that you will disagree with me, but never cancel me when you disagree, because I'm a little shaken up. I need to know, I need to have a vote from you that my vulnerability and my opening up my hard stuff, my difficult stuff, my dark stuff, that opening that up is not going to scare you away. And you need to talk to all 5, not in a group, but separately, because you need to have them look at you and say, yeah, you've got hard stuff, you've got trauma, you've got losses and everything. And I will, if I ever leave, it'll be because I'm too old or too tired or it's a different mission, but it won't be because you're vulnerable, because I want to be around the vulnerable leader. You need to hear that 5 times from those 5 good-hearted people, Anita, and that will do a lot to reorient you.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, I want you to do that. Check it out. See what they say. Let me know what happens.
Okay, dear.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. You know, it's so funny. I'm glad she brought that up. Is that, have you ever had that experience where, I don't know, you're speaking or you're doing a sales call or you're at church or whatever, and maybe make a little presentation. And, you know, maybe there's 30 people in your Sunday school. I don't know if they still use the word Sunday school anymore, whatever they call it. And 29 of those 30 people are like, oh yeah, that was thoughtful. That made sense. And one person, I don't know, they looked like they were eating prunes that morning, and they, you know, like this, and they're kind of negative, and you feel like they're kind of flipping you off and stuff. And when you go home, guess what we think about, Stacy? You already know the answer. What do we think about, Stacy? Do we think about the 29 that were going, thank you for the challenge, or what do we think about?
Well, that's different for different people. You might be thinking, I might be thinking, why didn't I say this? Or why didn't I reach out or take advantage of this opportunity or that opportunity?
But you're in the right place. Most of us focus on the one that didn't respond well, not
True.
the 29 that were like, thank you.
True.
And that's what happened to Anita, because there's reason for it with all the losses and trauma she's had. And you've got to be very aware of that. I had to work on that as a speaker a long time. I was in a place where I wrote about one of my books. That was like 1,000 people. And it was, you know, we were talking about something. It was either they were laughing and writing notes and thinking. And there's this one guy that's sitting in the front row with his wife like this. Because clearly it was a growth conference. His wife was forcing him to go because he didn't want to. And he was really bugged. And so he's, you know, I want to listen to this jerk. And I went to the break and I went, why am I not happy? And I thought, I just let this guy take away my joy. This sucks. And I had to kind of reorient and realize that 999 of them were having a good time. Watch out for the tendency. It just helped to kind of think about that. Anyway.
Very true. Very true. Okay, you have your next caller up. Caller, you are live on the Dr. Townsend live show. Go ahead and tell us your first name only and where are you calling us from today?
Dr. Renee from Wisconsin.
Hi, Renee. Welcome to the program. And what's your question for us?
Yes, thanks so much for taking my call. Big fan. Follow you in Henry Cloud. I've been working in the tech sector for 7 years. And before that, I went to school to be to work as a worship leader, music pastor. But I felt like it was a big blessing to get into tech after struggling a lot. I come from like a poor family background, so the first to go to college, and was struggling in the recession after graduating, and then just trying to kind of pay off my student loans. So thought it was like a big blessing to get into tech, but I encountered just a lot of sexism and unfortunately downright misogyny on different positions I was in, and I'm feeling like after it affecting my mental health for so many years that maybe it's just best to leave. I don't know if you have thoughts on this, but if I stayed in it for 2 more years, I could I could get a down payment for a house and then, you know, buy a nice, like a more reliable car. But I don't know if it's worth it, if it's just been too much hardship to stay in the field, if it makes more sense to do something, maybe I'm more, has more purpose and like impact in the kingdom, which would be like more worship leading or missions. Do you have any thoughts on how to know if it's time to leave a field?
Yeah, I do, and I'm really sorry to hear this, Renee. That's you know, to feel like you've been, I mean, maybe you've even been targeted. Who knows? But that's awful and very wounding. Anytime a person has let's call it a difficult context, work is a context. If they have a difficult context, but there are benefits it brings them, and they're thinking, should I stay on it for certain? In your case, it's the finances to get some security. You got to look at several things. The first is, have I tried different avenues in that context? To say that the tech industry is more misogynistic than all other industries, I haven't looked up, you know, I haven't checked, Gallup on it or Pew Research. I don't know. Maybe it is the most misogynistic industry in the world. Who knows? But
they did a study like 2 years ago with Accenture that most women leave the field by age 35 due to inclusion. Yeah, kind of inclusion. So I think, it kind of can, mostly I've dealt with contracting roles where I don't have HR. I've learned enough like over the last years to not take a contract role, but still, still, unfortunately, it ends up being like mainly, I guess you could put it plainly, like not very many females, and definitely not much diversity. So yeah.
Okay. Then you've got statistics behind you, and that's hard. So then what a person, and I would put this also with, some people would say, well, our company's issue or our industry's issue is not misogyny, it's chaos. You know, that nobody leads, or we've got the totally autocratic, beat you up if you make a mistake, or there's culture problems, or there's, they have horrible strategy, or whatever. So just say major problems, and yet there's some kind of benefit to sticking around. We're talking 2 years, and what I always tell people is, number one, are there other avenues? And we don't have time to go into this deeply. I'm just giving you a 30,000, of course. Are there other avenues within that industry where you can make the kind of money you need to make, where you are reporting to different people? I know that you're a contractor, but you are having different engagement with different people. So you can or is everybody you in contact with going to be, discriminating against you? But ask that question. Are there other avenues? Number two, and I'm going to go down the tough tree. Suppose everybody in the industry you're in contact with is a total misogynist, which could happen. Then it's, can I tolerate bad treatment without it damaging me for 2 years? You mentioned it gave you mental health problems, and I assume then you went and got help. Did you get some kind of help?
Yeah, I did, but it affected me, enough where, it really, I would say, impacted my quality of life in a major way, and caused, where I was, it was a pretty rough knockdown. Yep. But yeah, I did get help. But still, I would say, and feeling kind of
even so. Here's where we have to go. Is the help even? I'm glad you got help. Was the help not enough to keep you functioning in a crazy environment?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was part of it. I kind of had gaps in my resume, so I got unemployed, and then unfortunately the pandemic hit. So that was kind of the fallout of, not being able to get work during the pandemic. So I think the fallout from that was, losing my apartment, or just, having a lot of kind of chaos from just the job loss.
Okay. Are you employed now?
Yep. reasonably. I mean, yeah, I should
Right.
say there was just I guess why I'm kind of thinking about this too is they did budget cuts and my position was eliminated. So I
Okay.
can get unemployment currently, but yeah, I think it's kind of given me I guess thoughts about wanting to just look for,
Sure.
as I'm searching, maybe look outside the industry now. So
Sure. Some people will stay in a not good environment or bad environment and get the principle really, Renee, is as problems increase so should your support. I've known people that were in a crazy environment, so they went to a good therapist 2 or 3 times a week and got a support group and got a prayer team. They were spending most of their time, getting the recovery and health because they want to be strengthened enough to take all the arrows and slings because they had a goal. That's another approach. But let's suppose that doesn't work for you. Then if nothing that you do can keep you from being damaged emotionally, the support's not there, or you don't have the funds to get a good therapist, or there's not enough people that can support you and let you vent and tell you that you're a good person. If you don't have that, then you can't afford to be damaged. You can't afford to get depressed or go into a clinical anxiety disorder or whatever. And that's when you need to decide this isn't working. There are some places where the damage is greater than my ability to get strengthened. And that's when I would look around. So I would use those kind of things as a vetting way to look at whether it's time to go or not, Renee.
Sure. And ideally, and maybe this is easy to ask, but I mean, when you're looking for, your calling or your career in your life, I don't know, like, I guess, how do you decipher where you should spend your time? What are the factors that you would, look at in deciding, like, this is where I should be as far as my calling career?
Well, this is when we go to the tried and true. What's your passion? What's your history? What do you have to do well that you have passion about, and also you have competency in? It's passion, it's competency, can it give you sustainability? Can it provide for what you want? And does it have meaning? I always use those four. I start with a passion because work is a long time. I go to competency. I go to will it support me or my client or whoever I'm working with? And does it have meaning? It doesn't have to be always specifically kingdom stuff like missions, or sometimes it can just be, I want to make sure I'm making a good pair of shoes. And do the people around me support that kind of a thing? You generally find out where the right place is. So best of luck to you, Renee.
Okay. And maybe this isn't
actually, Renee, we don't do a lot of follow-up questions. I'm really sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much,
All right.
Dr. Townsend.
Take care.
Okay.
That's a really good, she's found a hole. It's the right kind of hole. Like, well, maybe I need to rethink this. Tech is paying me well, but I'm getting damaged. It's the right time to be rethinking these things. And that is also what happened in COVID for a lot of people. Sort of like, instead of getting stuck, on the hamster wheel, like, this is what I do, and then I'll go have barbecues on the weekend and go to church. It was sort of like, what's it all about? Difficult times caused us to ask the larger purpose question. Like when Rick Warren wrote his book, Purpose-Driven Church, Purpose-Driven Life, and all that. It makes us ask the kind of game-changing questions up here, as opposed to, well, I'm in this industry, can I go for a raise? Well, the big question is, are you in the right industry? So she's asking the right questions. And think about if you're in that place of the big whys, the kind of, you would call them the big sea changes, instead of, okay, I'll make a lateral move. I'll go with Smith Industries instead of Jones Industries. The sea changes. Think about the Townsend Institute. We have fully accredited, fully functioning masters or credential in organizational leadership, or in coaching and consulting, or in counseling. You can get a master's or credential. In fact, in counseling, you can get a PhD if you've already got your master's. So we've got people from academic womb to tomb, tomb to womb, womb to tomb. In fact, we also have a bachelor's for you if you've never had one. And people are getting tons and tons of great jobs. We're fully online and got all the bells and whistles. And so if you want to know more about us, if this is that kind of sea change like Renee's going through, go to one of our information sessions. We've got hundreds and hundreds of students, and they're just getting fulfillment. They're getting opportunity. They're going, I never I thought I could do this, but if I took a year, I can still work and do this in a year or two, I can go get an incredible job opportunity and something I always dreamed. Stacy, I don't know what the date of the next info session is.
It is, February the 13th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And I just dropped the link down in the comments. So if anyone wants to register, it's still open.
Yep. So check it out. We all need to go through those times. I certainly went through mine. All right.
Okay. Your next caller is live. Caller, you are live on the Dr. Townsend live show. Go ahead and tell us your first name and where you're calling us from today.
Hello?
Yep.
Hello.
We hear you.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. My name is, the difficult name, Szabolcs. I'm calling from Europe, Hungary.
Can you spell your name? Because I want to be able to say it right.
Okay, so it's S. S Z. A. B. O. L. C. S.
B as in boy, S as in Sam.
Yes. C like
Charlie.
Like to come. C like to come.
All right.
It's
Now, would you
Szabolcs,
pronounce it for me
Szabolcs.
one more time so I can make sure I get it right?
Yeah, Szabolcs.
Szabolcs. Okay. Well, welcome, Szabolcs, and
yeah,
thanks for calling from Hungary. And what's your question for us?
Yeah, well, I'm 34 years old. 3 years ago, I had my first girlfriend. It just lasted for 3 months. And now it's been like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I started chatting with a 28-year-old girl on Instagram. We never met in person. And she started telling me that she had many sexual relationships and she tried everything you can imagine about sex. And I have this feeling, I'm a Christian, but I'm just thinking of getting myself into casual sex. So it's in me. And I feel a kind of regret that I somehow try to respect the God's command, but another part of me would do it, and I don't know what to do with this thing in my head.
Okay. Well, first off, welcome to the human race, right?
Yeah.
It's a universal problem. Where a person who is not married would love to have romance and love to have sex, and it's those urges and impulses are very strong. Are you asking me for help in how not to do that, or are you asking me whether you should have sex or not? So tell me how I can help, which question you're asking.
Let's just put it this way, like half of me would do it. The other half is like, okay, God is watching you. God doesn't like this. I mean, I don't know if I'm choosing from a free will.
Okay. So help me understand. Do you want me to help you not do it? Or do you want me to help you just make the decision whether it's right or wrong? Those are two kind of very different questions. Do you understand what I'm asking you?
Yep, the second one.
Okay.
If it's
you want
right,
to know whether it's right or wrong. All right. It's wrong.
Okay, I figured.
I'm sorry?
I'm listening.
Okay. I understand you're a Christian man, and I'm a Christian. And so, do you believe the Bible, that that's God's word?
Yes.
Well, that's what the Bible teaches.
Mhm.
That there's all kind of passages in the Bible. We don't have time to go into all of them, but there's like Hebrews 13. I don't have it right. Let the marriage bed be undefiled, meaning sex is reserved for marriage. First Thessalonians chapter 4 talks about to possess our bodies in purity. Henry Cloud and I wrote a book called Boundaries in Dating, which you might want to consider writing. We spent a whole chapter about why dating is not a place to have sexual fulfillment. So you might want to check that as a research. We talk about the psychology of it. We talk about the Bible verses. But I want to kind of pinpoint your view of God in here.
Yeah, but just people don't really feel dirty about this. Like, don't really feel guilt or any who are doing sex all the time and having sex with many people. The way I see it, they don't regret it. Okay, please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, but what was the point you were making about that?
I don't see the downside of the part where people are having free sex. I don't really see the negative effects of this.
Okay. So even if the Bible says it's wrong, you're saying, but I don't see a bad thing about it. So I know that the Bible says it's wrong, but I want to do it anyway because I don't see any bad outcomes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the first thing is that I would invite you to look at what the term obedience means. That when we say we believe the word of God, we say we believe what God says. And he never told us, well, you can pick and choose the verses that you like, and you shouldn't pick and choose the other ones that you don't like. He never says that. So that's one thought I would like for you to ponder is if I'm a Christian and I believe the Bible and he created everything, I'm responsible to do all those things. That's one part of the thought that I want you to think about. The next part is you said something that I want to kind of camp on, which was that he doesn't like it and he's looking at you. And it sounded to me like for you, God is sort of a mean guy. He sounds judging in your head. Do you feel like he's that way?
Well, regarding sexuality, yes. So I'm just thinking, if I died now, I don't know could I say to God, like, this is in my head. He would condemn me, I think.
Okay. So have you accepted Jesus as your Savior?
Yes, but still this sexuality thing is in my head. I couldn't.
It is in your head, and it's
I think
in all of our heads. So in your mind, even though you've accepted Jesus' death for you, if you died right now, God would say, I know you accepted Jesus, but since you're thinking so much about sex and considering acting out, you're not going to go to heaven. Is that what it is like for you?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to maybe listen to this broadcast. I'm going to give you another passage, and I'm throwing a lot of data at you because these are very important issues. And I know you may not have time to write this down, but I want you to look up 1 John chapter 5, verses 11 through 13. 1 John chapter 5, verse 11 through 13, which talks about the fact that once we accept Jesus, he will never let us go. Even if you became a murderer or a bank robber or a sexually promiscuous person, certainly he doesn't like it, but that would not keep you out of heaven if you truly accepted Jesus. Now,
okay.
Before we go further, there's a third part I wanted to address with you, which is the statistics are against people that are, for example, cohabitating before marriage. People have a higher rate, if you plan to get married one day, a higher rate of marital unhappiness who are also cohabiting. So there's some statistics now that we're finding that having sex, maybe people don't have any kind of negative feelings about it. Maybe they feel no guilt. Maybe they feel happy about it, like you mentioned. But the statistics do not say that free sex is good for us relationally or psychologically either. So those are kind of three parts I wanted to share with you about all this.
But what about, I just read a Hungarian famous sex therapist, and she says that this very strict abstinence is also not a healthy thing.
Right. There's people
many,
that say, yeah. There's a school of thought on that, and I do not believe that is the right conclusion. When you look at people who are abstinent and have healthy lives and have great relationships, and they have wonderful jobs, they have services back, they give to organizations, they're involved in helping poverty, great friends, they're healthy, they work out, they love arts and sports and all that, they're fine. So I don't believe abstinence is a problem. I believe abstinence can be a very good thing. Anyway, I've got to run, but I hope that you can make some good decisions, and I'm glad you're curious about the issue. Take care.
Oh, taking my call.
Isn't that funny what an interesting call from, I don't want to say your name right, Zabolik, is that it's very hard to separate sex from values, from relationships, from spirituality. It's kind of woven into all of our life. And so when people tell me, well, I can do it and I don't feel bad, I'll go, yeah, and you probably don't feel bad, about lots of things. I don't feel bad about eating too much Ben and Jerry's, but bad things happen to me. And so it's important to be able to understand if there's some moral thing, whether it's sex or drugs or who knows, cheating on your income tax. Just because you don't feel bad about it doesn't mean it's not hurting you. So I wish you well, sir. Thank you for calling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, John, your next question comes from Julian she is watching live on Facebook, and she says, Dr. Townsend,
hi, Julian.
What is your advice to give oneself closure after initiating a separation/divorce, and how to stop ruminating about it? It's been over 10 months now. That's her question, and also any books that you would recommend.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it, and I'm sorry it happened, and that's a big loss, right? It's when we get married, our lives are like the Bible says are one flesh, and when it gets apart, it tears us up. To your question, the number one and two things that will help with the rumination are to grieve and replace. To grieve and replace. To grieve means to allow yourself to miss that relationship, even if it was toxic and bad and crazy and abusive and all that. There are still good things that you missed in that. And people sometimes, Julianne, they're so mad and so trying to stay away from the bad toxic stuff that they kind of put it all in one. They generalize, like I talked to Anita a few minutes ago. They generalize to everybody in every aspect of that relationship, and they can't feel sad when there were good, tender, warm times, and those must be grieved. Doesn't say that all the bad stuff was legit. It's not at all. But if we don't grieve those parts, they stay in our head and they keep us ruminating, obsessing, wonder why, what if, and all that. The second thing is to, how I'm about these, get a piece of paper and a pen and write down what you loved and needed in that marriage, what you loved and needed. Maybe it was because he was, strong, or maybe because he had a great sense of humor, or maybe the shared values or shared hobbies, or maybe he was very tender when it was good, or whatever. But list the 4 or 5 things that just meant so much when things were good. And without getting remarried yet, 10 months is way too soon. Without getting remarried yet, replace those with non-sexual, non-romantic relationships. Find somebody who's funny, a gal friend or a platonic guy friend. Find somebody who can be strong. Find somebody who understands your values. Find somebody who thinks you're an interesting person. Find some, who knows. But make that list and replace that person. And if you'll do the grief work and say no, say goodbye to this stuff. And if you'll also replace those functions the person brought in your life, that will go a long ways and to give you some peace of mind. Because rumination, the nature of rumination is a form of obsessionality. What it says is, I'm trying to solve a problem that I can't solve. I'm trying to fix something all by myself that the other person's not cooperating with, and it doesn't work. Your brain's just going, can't we work this out? Can't we work this out? And you have to say, not with that person, but we can replace those things you miss by some other good people.
Okay, John. Your next question comes from Tori over on Instagram. And she says, I will try to keep this short and sweet, but the gist is that I am a 28-year-old woman who has just remarried in my life, and the man has 2 small children. I am constantly caught in the middle between he and his ex-wife when it comes to things like school pickup or lunches or food at our house versus their house, the rules and things that each of them are setting. How can I try to be supportive of both of them without feeling like I'm getting stepped on in the middle of this?
Sure. Yeah, that's complicated, Tori. And as you found out, when you marry somebody with kids, you married a certain amount of complications, and there's people sometimes think, well, it's just me and him and me and her. It's not. It's just they have this. It's not bad. The kids are great, but you marry other complications. So this is not a conversation that you would need to have with the ex. I think that can make it more complicated. I would make it between you and your husband, and let him know what you want to help. I mean, you love him, and you probably are attached to his children, right? To some, they're not your kids, but I'm sure you're attached to them. So you sit down with him and you establish what you are happy to do and what you're not going to do. Because the ex and your husband are responsible for the kids. And I'm saying the word for, F-O-R. They are responsible for the kids. You, Tori, sorry, I'm trying to think out loud. You, Tori, are responsible to help. Responsible for means their livelihood, their welfare is in your husband's and her hands. Their welfare is not in your hands. You are helping, you're assisting, you're responsible too. And they're very, very different things. So you just say, I can't do certain school things, that it doesn't work with other things I'm doing. I'm happy to help here. And you work that out with him. Now, it may be that you feel bad or you feel selfish or whatever by even doing that. You got to get with a third party, a good friend who loves those kids and loves him and loves you. And maybe you're not strong enough to say, here's what my ground rules are. It's about boundaries, really. But he's an advocate to say, what are reasonable boundaries? And your advocate friend may say, no, you do need to work out and you do need to have time to yourself. You need X, Y, Z. So what can you offer your husband? Maybe you can't do it because you feel guilt or bad. Then go to your third party, get it straight in your head of what you will and will not do, what you're happy to do, what you won't do, not being rigid, because there's some things in the gray area, like every now and then I'll do X. You can't be black and white, but a basic ground rule of your availability. Then you go back to your husband and say, here's what I want to talk about. Want to help, but this is where my boundaries are. And the reality is, he and the kids are better off because you're offering something. It'd be as if he hired a nanny and here's the nanny's job requirements. Well, you're not a nanny, you're his wife, but you have certain limitations with your time. You're not a mom, you're helping. And so keep the roles clear. All righty. Well, what great questions that was, Stacy. Had a lot of things that went around the whole world, didn't they?
Absolutely. And several that we weren't able to get to. So hoping they'll join us again next week.
Yep. So hope you have a good week. Kind of remember a lot of these questions were about how do I hold on to me when I'm trying to love somebody else? That's a big question. And remember that God made a you, and be around people that remind yourself there's a you. You don't have to isolate and be all by yourself just to hold on to you. You can hold on to you when you're around other people. So hope the week is a good one for you.